Good evening. We are back to studying the Spirits book, and we started chapter 2 of book 2 last week. We discussed about the purpose of incarnation, the reasons why we incarnate, and we talked a little bit about reincarnation. We left for this week a very interesting subject, which is the soul. And it's important to understand soul according to Spiritism, okay? And we're going to talk a little bit about soul in the other beliefs, which are basically mostly the same, but soul comes from the Latin anima, or from the ancient Greek, which is also psyche, which is to breathe, okay? So let's start with the first question, Philip, and then we'll talk a little bit about it.
Number 134. What is the soul? An incarnated spirit. What was the soul before being united with the body? A spirit. Are souls and spirits one and the same thing? Yes, souls are spirits. Before joining a body, the soul is one of the intelligent beings living in the invisible world. It assumes a physical body temporarily to complete its purification and enlightenment.
Okay, so first, we said this many times, but it's always important to repeat. We are talking about soul according to Spiritism. Okay, so when we study Spiritism, we have words that we use in Spiritism that you may find different definitions and different meanings outside Spiritism, in other religions or even in other philosophies. So in Spiritism, a soul is an incarnated spirit, a spirit that is living in the physical with a physical body, okay? You are going to find definitions of soul that, any living being, either here or there, it's a soul. But for us, for practical terms in Spiritism, when we say the soul is an incarnated spirit, when a spirit is not incarnated, we call it an errant spirit or only a spirit, okay? So that's the second question that the spirits answered. What was the soul before being united with a body? A spirit. Okay, it's important for us to define this concept, because every time we talk about the soul in Spiritism, we are talking about an incarnated spirit. So again, there is nothing wrong if you go if you go to a church and someone talks about the soul of my grandmother that is in hell, heaven, or paradise or purgatory. It's their definition of soul. In Spiritism, we use soul as an incarnated spirit, and we are the spirit. We have a body. We don't have a spirit. Okay, this is another thing that a lot of people say it wrong. I am a spirit. I have a physical body. I have a spiritual body, but I am a spirit or a soul incarnated spirit. Okay, so that's when he says that souls are spirits. Before joining the body, the soul is one of the intelligent beings living in the invisible world, in the spiritual world. And of course, in our process of evolution, we have a physical body temporarily, okay? The definition of soul, we go back to the Greek philosophers, and Socrates, Plato, Aristotle, they all talked about the soul. In Judaism and in some Christian denominations, only human beings have immortal souls, although immortality is disputed within Judaism. and the concept of immortality may have been changed a long time. Okay, Thomas Aquinas, a Catholic theologian, attributed soul to all organisms. Okay, so you find definitions, and other religions also, like Hinduism and Buddhism, talks about all living beings, and from the smallest bacteria to the largest of mammals as having souls. That's why, you know, I thought it was important for us to define, according to Spiritism, soul is an incarnated spirit. Okay. Again, we're not saying that the others are wrong. It's just a definition that we use in Spiritism that makes it easier for us to discuss it. Okay. Questions, comments here? Oh, okay.
135. Is a person made up of anything other than a soul and a body? The link that unites the soul and the body. A. What is the nature of this link? It is semi-material. It is the intermediary between the soul and the body. This is required for communication between the soul and the body. The spirit can act upon matter and vice versa through this link. Therefore, human beings are made up of three essential elements. 1, the body or material being, similar to animals and given life by the same vital principle. 2, the soul or incarnated spirit, which is housed in the body. 3, the intermediary principle or perispirit, which is a semi-material substance. It is the innermost envelope of the spirit and unites the soul with the body. This three-part nature is equivalent to that of a fruit, which includes the seed, the perispirum, and the rind or shell.
Okay. So we studied about the perispirit before. We covered the perispirit, okay, which is the spiritual body. So we are, when we are incarnated human beings, we are made of three essential elements, right? The body, our physical body, which is similar to the animals, has vitality like the plants, and has components like the minerals, right? So because in our evolution from a spiritual principle to an individual spirit, we go through all stages of evolution, starting from the mineral, then the vegetable, then the animal kingdom, and then we become individual spirits. So that part, the body, it's very similar to the animals, and we know with the recent studies of DNA and the genome, how similar we are to the animals in terms of our physical composition. But the difference is the soul that animates the body, the soul, the incarnated spirit, which is the intelligent being of the universe, derives from the intelligent principle, and has the ability to think and to act and to conduct the body. And between those two, we have the perispirit, which is our spiritual body, which is also matter, also comes from the universal fluid, and that stays with us after we leave the physical body. We go back to the spiritual world, and we take with us the spiritual body, or the perispirit, and that is what makes a lot of discarnated spirits that are not aware of the discarnation process to be confused when they wake up on the other side and they see that they have a body, a spiritual body that looks exactly the same like the physical body that they just left behind, and causes a lot of confusion. We were dialoguing with a spirit this last Monday that was discarnated recently, and it was very difficult for him to accept and comprehend that he had a spiritual body, because he looked at himself and he said, I'm seeing myself. I'm looking, that's how I look. That's how I feel. Wow. How do you say I don't have a physical body? I'm seeing my physical body. And we see that a lot of times, the difficulty of this recently discarnated spirits to understand the idea of a spiritual body that is a reflection. Well, it's the other way around. The physical body is a reflection of the perispirit. But the perispirit is the connection between us, the soul, the spirit, and the physical body. Without it, we cannot act on the physical body. In theory, because that's, we never not have it. So the theory from the spirits that without it, we cannot act on a physical body, but we always have a spiritual body that is in the intermediary. Okay? That's an important concept here also to understand. Okay, comments, questions? No? Okay.
Johnny,
Yes, Luis.
a silly question, but if an incarnated person loses a member, does he loses the perispirit part of the member?
Equivalent on the perispirit? No, it does not. And that's, the expression phantom pain, that people that lose the limbs sometimes feel that the lost limb, they feel the limb. It's actually the perispirit, right? Because they are feeling, they have the perispirit, it's full, it's complete. And they have this sensation in the perispirit of, let's say, a hand that was lost, and they feel like they still have the hand, because they do in the spiritual body. They don't have in the physical body. And it's a good question. It's a question that people ask a lot, and it's important for us to understand the concept, right? Because the perispirit, it changes, it's very fluid, it changes, it can change very easily, right? But it doesn't lose anything in terms of, it doesn't lose a hand or a limb or an organ, because again, the organs in the perispirit is it's a different definition of the organs in the physical body. And actually, talking about this, Luis, yesterday on our study of the book, the latest book by Divaldo, someone asked a question, because they say in the book that they are removing whole sections of the lower zones, the very dark caverns, to primitive planets, or to less evolved planets. And the question was, what happens with the perispirit, right? And it's a very interesting question, right? Because the perispirit we have here is adapted to Earth, to the planet, right? So when we're moved to a different planet, our perispirit changes, but they won't even notice that. It will change their perispirit. We will adapt to the new planet they belong to. But it's a subtle change that you don't even understand and are not aware if you are a less evolved spirit. But yes. So.
Just continuing. I remember actually this part that you mentioned from the codification. But although I've read the full book of Perispirit by
Zalmino
Zimmerman, I don't remember having any reference if we, while incarnated, if we can manipulate the form, the aspect of the perispirit? I
We
understand you don't.
Yeah, well, we affect our perispirit by our actions here on a physical body, right? So if you are causing damage to your physical body by your own actions, not by accidents, but by your own actions, you are causing damage to your perispirit that will carry over to the spiritual world and maybe on a new incarnation, right? But you cannot modify your perispirit consciously from from an incarnated body.
Mind.
You can purify it as if you are evolving morally, right? You are cleaning the perispirit by your good actions here, but it's a process, not a conscious action. And there's a question here from Eric. The more you evolve, the less denser the perispirit becomes. Yes, that's correct. The more you evolve, the more ethereal the perispirit becomes. And that's why when you read about spirits interacting with others in the spiritual world, you'll see that sometimes spirits that will come from a more evolved area will appear with light and will take some time to appear. They will look different from to the ones that are in the less evolved areas, and that's why a lot of times these spirits that are struggling in the lower zones, when they see more evolved spirits surrounded by light, they think they are in the presence of angels or of God or things like that. It is said that it took Jesus 1,000 years to prepare his perispirit to adapt to Earth to be able to incarnate here when he had his incarnation here on Earth, because the perispirit of a perfect spirit is so ethereal that it requires a lot of effort to make it adaptable to less evolved worlds like we are. So that's why more evolved spirits use less evolved spirits to carry messages, to to act on their behalf on less evolved areas, so they don't need to constantly being making their perispirit more dense or more grow. No, it's not gross. It's yeah, that's the wrong word. The 1,000 years are on our Earth years. Yes, are on our Earth years. 1,000 years. Okay. It's sad, but we don't have any reference or any proof that it's just sad. Okay. Yes, Renata.
So you said that we don't lose, if we lose a limb on our body, I mean, here, we don't lose it, our perispirit still has that limb. So if you lose a leg, but the leg is still there, and that's why you have that phantom effect that you're talking about, which is very interesting. But I don't understand then, because at the same time, if we do some harm to our body, like if you smoke or if you drink too much, whatever, if you drink too much, you damage your liver. If you smoke, you damage your lung, and you carry that on your perispirit, correct?
Yes.
So why not losing a limb, which could be a consequence of something you did to yourself, like, I don't know, eating too much sugar, being diabetic, and you lose a limb. Why doesn't that also reflect on your perispirit?
It does. It does reflect, Renata, and we speak sometimes in our mediumship meetings. We speak with spirits that claim that they are blind or claim that they are having some physical problems. So the damage can be done to the perispirit in the sense that the effects are there, but it's not really. Let's say you damage your liver here on Earth. You don't have a liver equivalent on the perispirit that is damaged. You have a reflection of what happened to your liver in the physical body, because the organs in the perispirit work differently, right? You don't have the liver that functions like the liver on the physical body. But you have a liver equivalent in the perispirit that will carry the effects of the damage for a new incarnation or new reincarnation if you don't correct it or you don't work on it on the spiritual world. It's difficult to understand, and it's not easy to explain, and it's difficult to understand. But you know, your perispirit is our perispirit is very ethereal, very fluid. So it doesn't make sense to lose limbs, lose things like that, because the perispirit the perispirit can lose its form completely. In the case of ovoids, we discussed that in the past.
Yeah.
So, you know, it's, can it lose a limb in the sense that the spirit can feel that it doesn't have a limb? Yes, but it effectively did not lose it. I don't know if you can understand that, but I don't know if I can explain better than that.
It's fine. It's kind of subtle.
Yeah.
I have a question.
Yes, Paco.
Okay, you say that the greater, the more we advance, the perispirit becomes ethereal, kind of more and more ethereal or finer. Now, will there be a possibility in the evolution of evolvement in which the spirit may not need a perispirit at all?
That is another question, Paco, that we don't have a clear answer. Okay, we have different answers from that. There are versions that say that when you become a perfected spirit, a perfect spirit, you no longer have a perispirit. But if you no longer have a perispirit, how can you incarnate? And Jesus, as a perfect spirit, he may have taken him 1,000 years, but he needed a perispirit to start with. So that makes it very difficult for me to understand the idea of not having a perispirit. My understanding is you have a perispirit so ethereal that it is like you don't have it, but you still have it. That's the best I can come up with.
Okay, so yeah, I don't know why, but I could envision, because let's say but of course this is just a speculation on my part, but if Jesus Christ was a perfect spirit, he at that point in time he's able to get into a perispirit in order to come down to earth, because that was a mission. But you know, it's because he's a perfect spirit, he can do that.
Yeah, but then you're saying that he will have to build a perispirit from not having and build one from not having it. I have trouble understanding that, accepting that. But again, we don't have clear answers on that.
Yeah, there's no clear answer. Okay, thanks. Yeah. Thank you.
Okay, anyone else? Okay, that was the perispirit. It's always a complex subject and interesting one to discuss.
136. Is the soul independent of the vital principle? The body is merely the envelope, as we have repeated multiple times. Can a body exist without a soul? Yes. However, when the body dies, the soul leaves it. The union between the soul and the body is not complete before birth. But once this union is established, only physical death can break the bond uniting the body to the soul. Organic life may exist in a body without a soul, but the soul cannot live in a body deprived of organic life. What would our body be if it had no soul? A mass of flesh without intelligence, anything you would like to call it except a human being.
Okay, So some interesting concepts here. First, let us remember what is the vital principle. The vital principle derives from the universal fluid, the cosmic fluid, and it's what animate the living beings, all living beings, plants, animals, and human beings. They are all animated by the vital principle. But the soul or the spirit, it's independent of the vital principle.
It is
The
independent.
soul, yes, it needs the vital principle to animate the physical body. Without a vital principle, the physical body dies, or there is no physical body. But the soul is independent. It's a different thing. Like, the soul is not the spiritual body also. The soul has a spiritual body. The vital principle is an attribute that animates the living beings, but also is independent from the soul.
Yeah, but
The second question here, can a body exist without a soul? We know that it can, right? But it doesn't last long, because when there is no soul, spirit connected to a body, the body will die, okay? Be careful here with this concept here. The union between the soul and the body is not complete before birth. The key word here is complete. The union between the soul and the body happens at the moment of conception, okay? But it takes the 9 months to complete the union. And it takes another 7 years to fully integrate the new spirit to the physical body. That's why we have children up to 7 years, remembering their past lives, reacting with the spiritual world, having invisible friends that are invisible to us, but not to them. This all happens to children up to 7 years old, while they live half in the spiritual world, half in the physical world, in a sense, okay? So, and then the next 7 years until adolescence is when the links get strong, and then when you reach adolescence is when you are fully integrated and all the problems begin. So, yeah, you're laughing, Danny. You still have some time there. But the concept that organic life may exist in a body without a soul. Examples: we can have a body. Elmo always talks about this, right? We can preserve the physical life through machines when a soul no longer exists linked to this body, right? We can pump the heart, we can inflate and deflate the lungs, but we cannot reattach the soul that has departed, the spirit that has departed, to the physical body. Once the spirit leaves the physical body will die. We can preserve it for a certain time, or it can survive by itself for some time, but it will eventually die. We know that in animals, right? The salamander, you cut their tail, and the tails continue jumping around for some time. That's organic life still existing, right? And you have cases, very rare cases, of pregnancies where there is no spirit attached to the baby, and the baby is going to, it has organic life, will be born and will die right after birth if it's not removed before or something like that, okay? So our body, if we had no soul, will be just flesh without intelligence. So you can call it anything, but you cannot call a human being, because a human being, like we discussed before, is composed by a spirit, a physical body, and the perispirit, which is the intermediary. Danny, question.
So all the cases of, you just mentioned, we call like a stillborn, it's necessarily there's an also attached? Like
No.
the body
No,
forms?
no.
Oh,
Most of them have a spirit attached to it, yes. And the reason that they are stillborn is there are different reasons, right? Karma and other things, the readjustment from the spirit, from the parents. But there are very few and exceptional cases that there is no spirit attached to the baby in the pregnancy. And why this happens, that's a karma for the parents, right? That have to go through the experience for any different reason. But that's very rare. And it's not very, and again, because we don't know that, we can only know from the spiritual world. We cannot speculate here when we are incarnated, right? But no, the miscarriages, the stillborn babies, the vast majority have a spirit attached to it. It's attached to it for some reason that it has to happen, right? Maybe the process is a rejection of the spirit, a rejection of the mother, or some other things that may happen during pregnancy. Experiences that the three of them or the two of them have to go through, the mother and the child.
One question.
Sure.
Okay, so here in Spiritism, birth is defined as that moment where a sperm fecundates an ovum. Am I correct? An egg. That's called birth.
Birth is birth, right? Is when the baby is born. No, but the union of the spirit and the new physical body happens at the moment of conception. Yes.
The union of the soul and the body is at that point of conception, of the part of the sperm with the ovum. Okay.
Yes. That's when the spirit connects it. Now, depending on the evolution of the spirit, and this is a different discussion, the spirit can spend pregnancy conscious in the spiritual world, because more evolved spirits can do that. So they are half conscious in the spiritual world and they can interact with the spiritual world. That's the exception again. The vast majority, you start losing your conscience of the spirituality as you become more and more attached to the new physical body that you are going to have. Okay. Okay. Any other questions here?
It's quite interesting that we don't have a sense of, when kids grow up and then they become teenagers and young adults, they don't have no sense of mortality. They think that they are. I wonder if that's a residual, what do you call it, remembrance from the other life in which they become aware that they will never die. Am I making sense? I don't know. I'm once
sure
again, I'm
what you're
speculating.
talking about, Paco.
What?
I'm not sure what you're talking about. What are you saying? That children have...
If I come from the spiritual world, I realize that I am an eternal being. Okay? Well,
yes.
Generally speaking. So when I'm born and I'm growing up, I have that sense of immortality. Because the sense of mortality doesn't really happen until you are kind of at 25, 28, 32. That's when the sense of mortality hits you. But prior to that, people are very like, hey, I can do anything I want because I'm, they're not afraid of dying. They're not afraid of danger. So I wonder if it's a remembrance. But once again, I'm speculating here. We'll never know for a fact.
Yeah, according to science, the study, the brain is not fully formed until you are around 24, 25. So that's why the full notion of danger only is completed when you are that age. That's why before that age, children, teenagers, and young adults take much more risks than adults do, because that's what you were saying. But that's a function of our brain being not fully developed, our physical brain. In terms of conscience of mortality, it varies from one to the other, right? So you have young children that talk about their previous existence, their previous lives, remember passages from their previous lives, and those that watched that series Surviving Death on Netflix saw the 2 cases of these young kids that remember perfectly their previous incarnations. And as you grow, this will slowly disappear because you integrate more and more with your physical body. And then when you are a teenager, that's when you rebel against everything. And even if you have notions of immortality, you reject them or you start questioning them, different avenues by different spirits in that age. But yes, again, because we don't clearly remember our previous existences or our life in the spiritual world, a lot of us, using reason, question our the spiritual life and question the realities that we cannot see, hear, present, touch, right? But as you become older and older, some people change. Some people become more have more acceptance of the spiritual world, or sometimes because they become more and more afraid of death, they start questioning it more and start looking for answers, and that's where they'll find these avenues, and that's why it's $4 billion is spent per year in the United States with mediums and psychics. Danny.
Okay, the brain is developed 25-ish, right?
Yeah.
So from 25 to, let's say, 35, 45, 55, I see that the tendency of getting more afraid of dying, it sort of grows. Like, even though, so a person of 40 or 35 doesn't feel like maybe afraid of death like as a person of maybe 85.
Yeah.
But in terms of the brain is already formed. But the realization that we are pretty much mortal, it's sort of like more intense, or the fear grows.
But again, it's our speculation here is that as you get close, when you are 25, 30, death is something very distant for the majority of people. Majority of people look around, see people living to their 80s, and they don't worry about death, right? And as you get older, you grow older, again, talking about the majority, there's always exceptions. As you grow older and get closer to that ages, you start questioning, right? Things happen around you. You lose loved ones. You have friends that die for different reasons, young, and that's when you start, questioning and maybe fearing what would happen with you if that happened, right? But again, in terms of the brain development, there is no changes. There's just this is a personal experience for each one of us. There's no general rule in that sense.
I think my question is more like thinking about Paco's question. Like, when we are freshly reincarnated, we are bringing that. It's not the memory, like the memory remembering, but it's fresher, the experience of being in the spiritual world and knowing that, or at least somehow knowing that you are coming back and you were there and you didn't die. So again, we have all the different cases that don't even realize they're there, and then they reincarnate. But I sort of like for me, it makes more sense as a kid, like a young kid, like the parents can leave their sight, right? So you cannot leave a 4-year-old by him or by herself at all, because they don't have no idea or sense or fear of death. That the sense of mortality is not there, and makes sense to me. Like as we get older, we get more and more like denser or more into the material life,
Yes.
and less connected to the past experience. Yeah. But I talked about the brain because the brain is formed. So the brain, this is it. So it's more like the experience then that matters.
Yeah, I agree with you. Yeah.
I think that also when you have kids, that changes a lot too, because I guess we are more afraid of dying, especially when our kids are at an early age. I think it adds to that. And right now, while we live in the pandemic and all, I think, I don't know, at least for me, it's a thought that constantly like came in my mind, like, oh my God, because you see so many people dying, and it's just like, it's so, real, that you wonder, like, oh, is my time coming? Is this a message?
Yeah, I think you're right, absolutely right. As these things happen, it's an opportunity for us to reflect how we are going to use these reflections is on each one of us. But yes, it's a good opportunity for us to reflect and to analyze. And I think, we in Spiritism, one thing that we talk a lot is about death, right? So it's something that is present, that is discussed, and it's analyzed. And I think that's one of the things that Spiritism has an advantage over other philosophies and religions, that it discusses, understands, and explains the concept completely, right? What happens. Renato just said that for those that are interested in the process of attachment of the spirit to a physical body, chapter 13 of Missionaries of the Light. Thanks, Renato. Yes. That's the other side. It's the beginning of the reincarnation. Yeah. Okay. Anyone else? Okay.
137. Can the same spirit incarnate two different bodies at the same time? No. The spirit cannot be divided and cannot live in two different bodies at the same time. See the Medium's book, chapter on bicorporality and transfiguration.
Yes, we just studied this, I don't know, 1 month ago with Elmo on the Medium's book. The spirit cannot be divided. So we cannot live in two different bodies at the same time. And that includes that I heard stories in the past that are completely and definitely wrong, of people saying that they lose a loved one when they're pregnant of 2 months or 3 months, and they say, oh, the one that is deceased is coming back as a new, in this pregnancy. No, it does not happen, because that would mean the spirit having been divided. So a spirit cannot be divided, cannot live in two different physical bodies at the same time. Now, bicorporeality and transfiguration, which are phenomena we study in the Medium's book, are different things. It's not a spirit dividing itself. It is the ability of the spirit to be present at a different places at the same time by means of transfiguration, bicorporeality. But it is not a spirit dividing itself. Okay, Luis.
Well, it's a tricky question. I was curious about this note, see the Medium's book. And I went to check the original French edition. Actually, it's a nouvelle edition, according to the second edition original from 1860. And it also includes this same comment. How can it be? The medium's book had not been published yet.
I don't know. I think this note is from a later version of the Spirit's book. It cannot be from, the note cannot be before the medium's book was published. The medium's book was published in 1861, right?
Yeah, I had never noted that. So it's something to be investigated.
Yeah.
I just wanted to mention it.
Yeah. So it's a basic concept here, right? It's one spirit, cannot occupy two bodies at the same time. Not even if one body is dying and the other is in the process of being formed. It's two different different spirits. Now, can it happen that the same spirit, someone has a miscarriage, then the same spirit comes back in another pregnancy? Yes, it happens, and it happens many times, but that's a different story. Okay. Okay. Questions here? Nope. Okay.
138. What should we think about some people's opinion that the soul is the principle of material life? This is a matter of words to which we impart very little importance. Before anything else, you should come to an agreement among yourselves.
So here the spirits have very little patience with Kardec. Find words to define what you want to know, and then come into an agreement. Meaning, is the soul the principle of material life? Well, if that's how you define the material life, yes, fine. But if you're not defining that way, then not. So we don't have much to say here. It's the spirit saying that we have to have better, and we'll see again in the next question that they come back to that discussion of lack of words to define, or problem with the definitions that we use words.
Continue?
Yeah.
139. Some spirits and some philosophers before them have defined the soul as an animated spark emanating from the great whole. What is the cause of this contradiction? There is no contradiction. It depends on the meaning you attribute to certain words. Why does your language not have a word for each thing? The word soul is often used to express very different things. Sometimes it is used to refer to the principle of life, and in this sense, it is correct to figuratively state that the soul is an animated spark emanating from the great whole. These words describe the universal source of the vital principle, of which each being absorbs a portion, and that returns to the general mass after death. This idea does not in any way exclude that of a separate moral being, independent of matter, maintaining its own individuality. This being is also called the soul, and it is in this sense that we speak of the soul as an incarnate spirit. In having different definitions for the word soul, spirits each use their own version according to their personal perspectives and the earthly ideas they still support. This is just one example of the inadequacy of the human language, which does not have a unique word for each idea, a shortcoming that causes a vast number of misunderstandings and disputes. It is for this reason that the higher spirits tell us to first come to a mutual understanding in terms of our definitions. Shall I read?
Yeah, refer to the explanation regarding the word soul in the introduction, section 2, right? So go back to the introduction section 2, they talk about the definition of soul. So here, Kardec is asking again that you have communications from the spirits and from some philosophers, and he's talking about Socrates, Plato, Aristotle, that use that the soul is an animated spark emanating from the great whole, right? And the spirits tells us, listen, you should have different words for different definitions. Why does your language does not have a word for each thing? And I was remembering when we were studying Love Sunday on the Gospel according to Spiritism, that I brought the 7 definitions of love, different words and definitions of love in the Greek language, right? And in English, we have only one word, which is love, that have, mean a lot of the same things, different things. And here, when Kardec explains that, that you are going to find different definitions of soul. We need to understand the definition of soul according to Spiritism. It's an incarnate spirit. And the rest, if other religions, philosophies, and creeds have different definitions of the soul or different uses of the word soul, that's fine. That's their prerogative, and we're not going to argue here. It's just that for us in Spiritism, when we talk about soul, we have to use it as an incarnate spirit because it makes everything easy. Is what the spirits ask us. I have words that define specific things, have specific words. That's why Kardec created the word spiritism to separate it from spiritualism, that it embraces a lot of things. So every spiritist is a spiritualist, but not all spiritualists are spiritists, of course. So that's why Kardec says in the beginning, for new ideas, you need new words. Kardec created the word medium, the intermediate, also, that is now used everywhere, but very few people know that it was created by Kardec, the intermediate between the spiritual world and the physical world. So, Kardec did his best to create words for new things, but the definition of soul, being an incarnated spirit, was actually given by the spirits to Kardec. Okay? Okay. We're going to stop here, I think, or let's do the next one, Philip.
140?
Yeah.
What should we think of the theory that the soul is subdivided into as many parts as there are muscles in the body, each ruling over a bodily function? It still depends on the meaning attributed to the word soul. If you equate the soul with the vital fluid, that theory is correct. If the word is used to express an incarnate spirit, it is wrong. We said that a spirit cannot be divided. Therefore, movement is transmitted to the organs through the intermediary fluid without ever dividing itself up. A. All the same, there are spirits who have given this definition. Ignorant spirits often mistake the effect for the cause. The soul acts through organs, and those organs are given life by the vital fluid distributed among them, and more abundantly in those that constitute the centers or foci of movement for each organism. This explanation is no longer acceptable when the term soul is used to signify a spirit that inhabits the body during life and vacates it at death.
Okay, so here it's a mixing of the word spirit or soul and the effects of the action of the soul over the physical body. that it divides in many parts. The soul does not divide. The spirit does not subdivide. If you want to call vital fluid and equate it with the soul, then of course it divides to animate the different parts of the physical body. But the word soul is used to express an incarnate spirit. So the spirit is not subdivided. And then Kardec says, but some spirits tells us, given us this definition. And the spirits remind us that the spirits in the spiritual world is just us on the other side. So if we didn't know better here, we won't know better there. So there are spirits that are pseudo-wise, like we study in the evolution and the hierarchy of spirits, that think they know more than they do, and they will give their opinions and ideas that are not necessarily the truth. It's only their idea and their interpretation. And something that we always like to remind is that the communications that come from the spirits do not guarantee veracity, or do not guarantee that it comes from evolved spirits. It can come from any type of spirit, and it can contain mistakes. And that's why we need to study, learn, and understand. Okay? Questions, comments? We're going to stop here. It's 7:28. Everyone good? Okay. All right, so let's stop share here. Before we close, let's talk a little bit about this weekend. On Saturday, we have a very interesting lecture. Paulo Bispo from the Spiritist Society, Allan Kardec Spiritist Society of Massachusetts, and a member of the United States Spiritist Medical Association, is going to talk about the influence of the spirit in cell physiology. So you ask, we discussed about the influence of the incarnated being on the perispirit, and he's going to talk, I imagine, the other way around, the influence of the spirit in the cell physiology. Very scientific, and it should be very interesting. So this Saturday, 11 a.m. through the United States Spiritist Federation channels, Facebook, and YouTube. Okay. This Sunday, we'll be studying On the Way to the Light, and we are on chapter of, we are discussing Napoleon and Kardec. We are right at the time when Napoleon takes power in France in the beginning of the 19th century, and Kardec is born and starts, and the Spiritism arrives. So last month we read the chapter from Light Ahead, this communication that Chico received from the meeting between Napoleon and Kardec. We're going to talk about it again. We're not going to read again, but we're going to talk about it again. And we're going to study Napoleon and Kardec. Okay. Daniela is reminding us that next Wednesday, the book club on the And Life Goes On, chapters 15 and 16. If you still haven't joined the book club, still time. You know, we are getting to the end of the book, right? But yeah, more or less half of the book, a little bit more than half of the book. It's a very interesting book, and you should join her in the study of the book. Okay. Carol, can you do our final prayer?
Sure. Thank you, John, and everyone. Infinite Creator, Supreme Intelligence, and First Cause, we are really grateful to be together this evening for our study together of the Spirits book. We've been studying the Incarnation of Spirits, and we've learned the definitions and the three phases of this, being the body is physical, the soul is the incarnate spirit, and the perispirit is the intermediary, and is also called the spiritual body. We are grateful to share this knowledge, this wisdom this evening, and we are grateful for the assistance of our spiritual benefactors, the mentors, the good spirits, the helpers and the healers, and the guides who are helping us to evolve, to grow, to be together in unity, and to continue with our studies. We are grateful for what we have learned and what we are able to share, not only inwardly, but with those who are receptive, as we can do so through our discernment. May we continue with our prayers, with our studies, and our mindfulness throughout the week. May we be of greater assistance to our fellow citizens, to our family members, our co-workers, and especially be good to ourselves. We are grateful for all that we have in terms of blessings, for the love, the light, and the peace of Christ that is coming through us now. We are grateful for all that we have and all that we will continue to receive. We humbly ask for the protection and safety going forth to family, friends, loved ones, and co-workers, those who are suffering in the world. May we add our prayers and our mindfulness to share the energy and the light with them. May they receive these blessings as well, and may their burden be lightened. We humbly ask now to close, and may we remind ourselves to be beacons of light. Go forth now in peace with the love and light of Christ within. So be it.